Prisoners will do anything to get what they want, from violence to pure manipulation. But sometimes, on rare occasions, these backdoor unholy moments are caught in 4K, and what they often reveal about cops is truly scary. So let's take a look at 15 times that this happened, starting with Casey White. "You're my queen, you're my everything." That's how the manipulation started. Casey White, an inmate at an Alabama jail, was known as a master manipulator. He successfully manipulated Vicky White, a police officer with an impeccable 17-year record. Vicky had always been a model employee, but she fell completely under Casey's influence. Her genuine affection for him led her to make unthinkable choices. Vicky White met Casey White at some point after arriving as an inmate in August 2020. Casey White was waiting for trial for the 2015 murder of Connie Ridgway, a 58-year-old mother of two, and he was also serving a 75-year sentence for other unrelated crimes. It's unknown exactly how they struck up a relationship, but it may have begun when Casey White reportedly commented on Vicky White's body from the window of his cell. Vicky White and Casey White entered into a secret romantic relationship that spanned about 2 years. In recordings of their phone calls, they talked about their love for each other and daydreamed about being together in the outside world. "After my first year being out, will you promise me you'll marry me?" Casey White said in one call. Vicky White had reportedly been planning her and Casey White's escape for months. Shortly before the escape, she sold her home for about $95,000, well below market value, as part of her plan to start a new life with him. For 11 days, they evaded capture, but their escape ended in Indiana after a police chase. Tragically, Vicky took her own life as law enforcement closed in, and Casey was recaptured and returned to custody. Much like Casey White, Curtis Warren seduced Stephanie Smith White. Curtis Warren. Stephanie Smith White, like others, became a target of manipulation by Curtis Warren, who exploited her vulnerabilities to satisfy his own physical desires. Warren, from Liverpool, was a major league offender who tried to manipulate Smith White into bringing contraband into the prison and asked about prison intelligence and security cameras. She not only had a physical relationship with the notorious gangster, but got a tattoo of his name. Smith White and Warren kissed and had oral, intimate acts in his cell, in the kitchen and laundry room at the jail, which houses some of the country's most dangerous criminals. Warren was believed to have continued to run his criminal enterprises from behind bars using mobile phones. But Smith White did not report that he had used a phone to contact her. Investigators found they had called each other 213 times in just 3 months, despite Smith White having undergone training about manipulative and corrupting inmates. Warren was also known to have had relationships with other prison staff. Smith White denied that a hole cut in the trousers of her prison uniform was to facilitate sex acts, but the sentencing judge said it was hard to imagine why else it was there. When HMP Franklin's staff became suspicious of Smith White's relationship with Warren, a surveillance operation was mounted that found evidence of her passing a note to him and receiving one back. Warren tried to eat her note when officers went to retrieve it from him, the court heard. The notes were found to be highly sexualized. In interviews with detectives, Smith White was said to be devastated, but hoped there was an outside chance their relationship could continue. Similar to Warren, Dino Harrison was another inmate who cunningly deceived prison officer Aisha Gobsley. Dino Harrison. Dino Harrison tricked Aisha Gobsley into a relationship, using her to make his prison life easier, but it ultimately cost her her job. Harrison, a 21-year-old convicted for robbery and drug dealing, began messaging Goldsby on Instagram with his contraband mobile phone, the beginning of a forbidden love story. In their correspondence, Harrison told Goldsby of how he has never felt love for someone in such a small amount of time, while Goldsby told him she trusted him with her whole heart. Goldsby hid the fact that Harrison had a mobile phone, but would continue to report other inmates. She tipped him off that a team was searching cells to give him the chance to hide it. But when Harrison's phone was finally found, the game was up. A search of the phone revealed the relationship between the pair, leading to Goldsby's arrest. The prosecutor said she misconducted herself in 3 ways. Firstly, she engaged in a romantic relationship with a prisoner, Dino Harrison, over electronic communications. Secondly, she failed to report the fact she knew Mr. Harrison held such a device capable of communications. And thirdly, she alerted him to the presence of a search team. He added, one message from the prisoner to the defendant said, "I've not felt like this about anyone. I never thought it would get deep. I didn't think I would get attached to you. I've never felt love for someone in such a small amount of time." Goldsby's lawyer said that Goldsby had displayed clear remorse at her own stupidity, but she was jailed for 16 months at Bournemouth Crown Court. Next, we have Sarah Williams, an officer at Liverpool's HMP Alt Course who was manipulated by an inmate. Craig Steenson. Sarah Williams, who worked at Liverpool's HMP Alt Course, fell into the traps and arms of sophisticated criminals. Craig Steenson, a notorious inmate at HMP Alt Course, strategically manipulated Sarah Williams, a trusted prison officer, into a physical relationship. Steenson, known for his cunning nature, exploited Williams's weaknesses, gradually gaining her trust. His ability to exploit her vulnerabilities made it easier for him to control her emotions and behavior. The affair began when Williams, who had been struggling with personal issues, found solace in Steenson's attention. Over time, Steenson's manipulative tactics, including using flattery and subtle psychological manipulation, kept Williams emotionally involved. Other than Steenson, she had inappropriate relationships with two serving prisoners and knew the three men all had mobile phones. However, instead of reporting this to her bosses, she swapped thousands of texts and calls with them, which included intimate chat, and images, the court heard. According to the Liverpool Echo, investigations into Williams started in early 2020 when Alt Course Prison received a tip-off that she was involved in relationships with multiple prisoners. Cell searches were later carried out and mobile phones were recovered, which found Williams had been communicating with inmates. Forensic examination of the inmates' phones showed more than 12,000 calls and texts with one prisoner, almost 9,500 with another, and 1,200 with the third inmate. The judge said when Williams's home was searched, details of gang members, some of them rivals to the inmates, were found. She had transferred money to one of them after he was transferred to a prison in Manchester. Next on our list is John McGee, another inmate who skillfully manipulated prison officer Emily Watson. John McGee. McGee, a Liverpool native imprisoned for causing death by dangerous driving, cunningly trapped prison officer Emily Watson for his physical pleasure. McGee used his charm and cunning to exploit Watson's vulnerability, building a relationship that led to a physical affair. Despite his criminal background, McGee's manipulative tactics worked in his favor, and Watson, despite her professional role, became emotionally involved with the inmate. John had been able to contact Emily Watson on Instagram via an iPhone 6 hidden inside a PlayStation he had opened with a screwdriver disguised as a pen. They had virtual intimacy via FaceTime, and Watson sent him naked photos and a video containing inappropriate content. Watson, 26, who was described in court as a naive thrill-seeker, had an intimate relationship with McGee at least once in his cell at HMP Berwyn in Wrexham, Mould Crown Court heard. Suspicions were aroused because she spent so much time talking to McGee on the wing. Watson pleaded guilty to a charge of misconduct in public office by engaging in an intimate and inappropriate relationship with a prisoner between October 2017 and the end of January 2018. Judge Perry said their families must feel betrayal at finding out that McGee was able to conduct a relationship from his prison cell. He added that the public would be astounded by the fact that a prisoner was able to have contact on Instagram from his cell. This quite reprehensible behavior was a gross dereliction of duty, the judge added. Mould Crown Court handed McGee a 12-month prison sentence to be served consecutively to his existing prison sentence for possessing an illicit phone and charger. Inmates often use love to trick officers, and Alex Coxon did the same with Jennifer Gavin. Alex Coxon, a corrupt prison officer who fell in love with an inmate at a men's jail, wept as she was jailed for 8 months. She was Jennifer Gavin, who was manipulated by a prisoner, Alex Coxon. Coxon trapped Jennifer Gavin in love, and Gavin sent Alex Coxon intimate pictures of herself on Snapchat during their time together. Coxon of Reese Avenue, Kinmel Bay, who had convictions involving drugs, robbery, and attempted robbery, was jailed for 10 months after he admitted having a prohibited item. In Berwyn, prison authorities received intelligence of a possible relationship, and when they investigated, a phone was found hidden under a prison laptop in Coxon's cell, and explicit images were discovered of a woman. Gavin later accepted contact with him using Snapchat, sending a snap of herself and kissing the inmate. Defense barrister Maria Macelis said Gavin had come to court with a packed bag. She knows the position she faces. She can't take any more waiting for her fate, said Ms. Macelis. She still struggles to explain why and how she came to be doing the things that she was doing. It was obviously a particularly low point in her life. She had just come out of a very lengthy relationship. The barrister said there was immaturity and an element of naivety, and Gavin felt manipulated into believing she was in a relationship with Coxon. She'd expressed love for him and sent images. Judge Perry said she acted entirely out of character and was genuinely remorseful. The court heard Coxon had been caught trying to pass a phone to another inmate, using dental floss to drag it across a corridor. Defense barrister Simon Rogers said he'd since done his best to turn his life around. Similar to Jennifer Gavin, Joanne Hunter also lost her job after falling into an inmate's trap. Connor Willis. Physical pleasure isn't always the motive. Some inmates manipulate officers to smuggle prohibited items into prison, as Connor Willis did. Joanne Hunter kissed and sent explicit pictures of herself to the prisoner who she thought was in love with her. Besotted Hunter brought the drug into the jail hidden in a juice carton and a Red Bull can. Prison authorities became aware of her behavior, and she confessed after being confronted. A judge described it as a tragic case and jailed Hunter for 3 years. He slammed her selfish and misguided behavior. Hunter admitted that she'd smuggled items into the prison on behalf of Connor Willis. He had come onto the wing where she worked, and at first she didn't like him because he was arrogant. But as time went on, he grew on her. Willis had given her his number, and she would call him and send him messages. The court was told that he allegedly arranged Hunter's meeting with a woman at Tesco to hand over the package. Hunter said she'd brought the packages into the jail at the weekend, when she knew that no one would search her due to staff restrictions as a result of COVID. She handed over the packages to a big player inmate in the prison before they were passed on to Willis. Hunter said she didn't know what was inside the packages but guessed it was tobacco, burn and weed, or a phone. Hunter was someone who had been manipulated into doing this. She had been used by Willis, whom she thought was in love with her, but clearly he was not. Hunter learned a tough lesson, but it was too late. The same thing happened to Amber Clell, whose relationship with an inmate caused her a lot of pain. Mark Kennedy, unable to live without substances in prison, devised a terrible plan to trap prison officer Amber Clell in a love scheme. Clell celebrated her graduation as a corrections officer in 2022, swearing to fulfill her duties faithfully and according to the law. 2 years later, she broke it while working at the Jeffrey Pierce Correctional Center. Mark Kennedy was in prison for a variety of serious offenses, including drug trafficking and other criminal activities. He had a history of substance abuse, which worsened during his time in prison. Clell's romance with armed robber Mark Kennedy lasted for months. She smuggled meth into the prison for her lover, with the drug hidden in balloons stuffed in her bra. She fell pregnant and told her colleague, Jessica Elguindi, who was also having a relationship with an inmate. "I'm literally pregnant," she wrote, adding, "I'm an idiot." Things came to an end in April when Clell was caught smuggling 33 g of crystal meth into the jail for her lover. Clell pleaded guilty to 6 charges, including misconducting herself in public office, accessing and modifying restricted data, and engaging in an intimate relationship with an inmate causing risk to safety. Clell was sentenced to an intensive correction order for 2 years, 3 months, and 200 hours of community service. In handing down his sentence, Magistrate Stephen Corey also took into account charges of engaging in a relationship with an inmate, bringing a prohibited plant into a place of detention, and unlawfully delivering to an inmate. After the tragic story of Clell, we have correctional officer Amy Connors, who crossed professional boundaries and fell victim to manipulation by an inmate. Sione Pennicini, convicted cop killer. Sione Pennicini exploited Officer Amy Connors, manipulating her for his own physical desires while serving his time in prison. Sione Pennicini was convicted of shooting and killing police officer Glenn McAnally in 2002. He was sentenced to 36 years in jail. Amy's husband had been convinced for months that his wife was cheating on him with someone from prison. Mr. Connors' jealous rage probed an internal investigation. He demanded to know the name of the officer his wife had been sleeping with. Intelligence officers at the maximum security prison put Amy under surveillance and were eventually forced to tell the husband, "Sorry, it's an inmate." It was found Amy exploited her position as a welfare worker to let herself into Sione's cell at night for physical intimacy. Amy was suspended from duty, and Sione was transferred to Goulburn Supermax Jail after an alleged assault of another prisoner. Amy Connors was arrested at her home in Smithtown after a police investigation into the alleged affair with convicted gunman Sione Pennicini. Police alleged that between July 2nd and July 22nd, Connors passed sensitive information to prisoners, engaged in an intimate relationship with a prisoner, and failed to disclose a conflict of interest. Further, it was alleged the woman also collected a parcel from a post box in June, addressed to someone else, and allegedly kept the contents of the package. Connors was taken to Kempsey Police Station and issued a court notice for misconduct in public office and larceny. Next on our list is another cunning inmate, Jared Smith, who deceived correctional officer Demi Zeshki. Jared Smith. Demi Zeshka fell victim to Jared Smith's manipulation as he used her for physical gratification and to smuggle prohibited substances. Let's introduce you to a prisoner who is currently on day release, Jared Smith, 23. Back in 2015, he pleaded guilty to dangerous driving that caused death. It was reported that Demi Zeshki, an NSW correctional officer, swapped her day shifts at Long Bay Correctional Center for a night roster so she could get intimate with 32-year-old drink-drive double killer Jared Smith in the gym. Zeshki and Smith allegedly used the prison gym as their meeting place during the night roster, where the two would engage in inappropriate activities. Her actions not only breached professional boundaries, but also violated the trust placed in her as a correctional officer responsible for maintaining discipline and order within the facility. The illicit affair eventually came to light when other guards became suspicious and caught Zeschke and Smith together. Following the discovery, an investigation was launched into her conduct. Unable to justify her actions, Zeschke chose to resign from her position before further disciplinary measures could be enforced. There are no charges for misconduct between prison officers and inmates because it is not against the law. However, the Minister for Corrections, David Elliott, has announced that he has instructed Peter Severin, NSW Prison Commissioner, to establish a task force investigating misconduct in prison. David Elliott told a press conference today, "I have also instructed the Department of Justice Secretary to provide options for an increase to the penalties for misconduct." Now, let's talk about Michael Kronshaw from HMP Buckley Hall in Rochdale, who tricked not one but two prison officers in his web of manipulation. Michael Kronshaw. Prison officers Alicia Bates and Jody Wilkes both found themselves caught in a prison love triangle with 36-year-old prisoner Michael Kronshaw at the same time. Kronshaw, serving time for robbery, used charm and manipulation to simultaneously form relationships with both officers. Alicia Bates was reportedly the first to fall under Cronshaw's influence, believing she had a special connection with him. Bates had a relationship with Kronshaw between December 2019 and June 2020 while working as a prison officer at the Category C male prison, which has a capacity of 450. Operational support grade Wilkes, whose Facebook page said she studied law with criminology at the University of Salford, conducted her relationship with Kronshaw between April and June 2020. Both exchanged thousands of messages with the same inmate. Bates even sent naked photos to the drug trafficker. The situation unraveled when the relationships came to light, causing a significant scandal within the prison. Investigations revealed that both officers had breached professional boundaries, compromising the safety and integrity of the institution. Kronshaw manipulated the women not only for romantic gratification, but also to gain privileges and potentially smuggle contraband. Bates was given 2 years and 8 months for misconduct, while Wilkes got 12 months and was suspended for 2 years. Next, we have Andrew Hall, who manipulated prison officer Claire Lloyd so deeply that she described him as her soulmate. Andrew Hall. Claire Lloyd knew very well that having a relationship with an inmate was against the rules and a criminal offense, yet she couldn't stop herself from falling for Andrew Hall. The couple exchanged hundreds of phone calls and text messages, with some calls lasting up to 2 hours. Lloyd turned a blind eye to the fact that Hall was using an illicit phone in jail. Lloyd sent Hall messages referring to her getting undressed, and in one text said she couldn't wait to kiss and cuddle him. In July 2022, he said he was over the moon, that Lloyd was working on his wing in the prison. Lloyd had texted Hall to tell him that she loved him. In another message that month, Lloyd said he had his back. When rumors began to spread in the prison about their relationship, Lloyd claimed that the complaints were malicious and that other staff had a vendetta against her, but she was found out and suspended from her role. The following month, prison officers were called to an incident in Hall's cell after the alarm was activated. Lloyd arrived after other officers. They told her to leave, saying the incident was her fault and that she was a corrupt bitch. After getting caught, she called Hall Fitty Vitty, her soulmate, and Big Softy. It was clear that they were engaged in a romantic relationship. The exact extent may never be known, the prosecutor said. Hall sent some explicit messages detailing how he had performed an intimate act on himself. Claire Lloyd faced the ultimate fall from grace and joined Hall in becoming a serving prisoner. Hall received an extra 9 months in addition to his current sentence. The next master manipulator on our list is Laverne Ford Morgan. Olivia Hodgson abused her position as a prison officer by choosing to have an inappropriate relationship with an inmate, Laverne Ford Morgan, despite knowing that she would now have to face the consequences of her actions. Olivia Hodgson began a relationship with prisoner Laverne Ford Morgan while she was working at HMP Garth in Lancashire in early 2020. She smuggled mobile phones into a convicted murderer's cell to communicate with him in jail. Ford Morgan, who was serving a life sentence for murder and possessing a shotgun and firearm with intent to endanger life, maintained contact with Hodgson through smuggled mobile phones. The phones were used to exchange messages that further deepened their illicit relationship. In January 2021, Ford Morgan was transferred to another prison, and his mobile phone was discovered after they received intelligence which led to a cell search. On the 30th of July 2021, Hodgson was arrested at HMP Garth, where she had been working since 2017. Her home address was searched, with officers seizing another mobile phone which contained images of the pair, as well as a birthday card addressed to Olivia. which contained Ford Morgan's fingerprints. Investigations revealed that Hodgson had not only breached her duties, but had also compromised the safety and integrity of the correctional facility by her actions. Detective Constable Becky Pearson from the Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit's Prison Anti-Corruption Unit said, Olivia knew right from wrong and had received adequate corruption training where she would have gained a good understanding of the criminal outcomes should a relationship be entered into with a prisoner. Hodgson faced legal consequences for abusing her position of trust as a public servant. She was subsequently sentenced to 8 months in prison for misconduct in public office. Similar to Ford Morgan, Adam Higgs also deceived a prison officer using a fake contact scheme. Adam Higgs. Katie Loxton met inmate Adam Higgs when she was working as a prison custody officer at HMP Oakwood in Staffordshire. The pair managed to bypass security measures on the phone system at the prison so they could communicate through a fake contact on Higgs's telephone in his cell, speaking for hundreds of hours. Higgs made a total of 3,451 calls to the fake contact number, speaking with Loxton for more than 380 hours, costing him £798 between the 7th of July 2021 and the 13th of January 2022. A court was told the pair would often perform sexual acts to each other over the phone. Higgs also managed to hide a mobile phone which he used to communicate with Loxton through social media. Suspicions were raised when Loxton was noticed by other officers to be spending a large amount of time on the block where Higgs was housed. She was arrested, and a search of her home on the 27th of January last year found 3 handwritten letters from Higgs. Higgs was interviewed about the findings in prison in March 2022, and the pair later admitted their offenses at Wolverhampton Crown Court. Loxton has now been jailed for 12 months for misconduct in a public office. Higgs was also handed an 8-month sentence for possessing inside a prison a device capable of transmitting or receiving images, sounds, or information by electronic communications. Detective Constable Adam McGee of Staffordshire Police said Loxton and Higgs were able to manipulate the security measures of the prison telephony system to hide their relationship from officers and inmates. He added that the department is committed to upholding the values and standards of conduct that the public rightfully expects from the department. He also said, I'm happy that Loxton recognized her conduct had fallen short of the expected standard. Our list concludes with the dismissal of prison officer Tara Brooke, who lost her job after falling into an inmate's trap. Hasak Zreika. Tara Brooks, a correctional officer at Parkley Prison, was manipulated into a forbidden relationship with 41-year-old inmate Zreika, leading to her professional downfall. Brooks had worked at the prison for 2 years before she encountered Zreika, whose cunning tactics ensnared her in a web of deception and emotional manipulation. Their secret relationship began when Brooks set up a P.O. box and used the pseudonym Belinda Taylor to write letters to Zreika. The inmate exploited her vulnerabilities, establishing a connection that went beyond professional boundaries. During a routine search of Zreika's cell, officers discovered a mobile phone he used to maintain contact with Brooks. Alongside the phone, personal letters and even a Valentine's Day card from Brooks were uncovered, exposing their inappropriate communication. Brooks was arrested, and her legal team attempted to argue that her actions should be considered under the Mental Health Act, citing her emotional fragility and skewed perception of relationships due to feelings of inadequacy and being unfulfilled. However, the magistrate rejected this plea. Overwhelmed, Brooks broke down in tears in court, supported by her family as she faced the consequences of her choices. Although the prosecution noted that the relationship had not turned physical, they highlighted its intimate nature and labeled it a precursor to misconduct. The manipulation by Zreika, who targeted Brooks's emotional vulnerabilities, ultimately led to her sentencing under new legislation in New South Wales. Brooks received a 2-year provisional order following a mental health assessment, which revealed how Zreika's actions exploited her need for validation. The judge acknowledged her personal struggles but underscored the severity of breaching professional boundaries. This connection cost Brooks her career and reputation. That's it for today's video. Which one of these inmates do you think was the ultimate master? Manipulator? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to click on the cards on your screen for more intriguing stories. See you in the next one.